think there's something wrong with it. Yesterday, the office of the president called me. Who? From the office of the president. Wow. My problem. Yes, and then I reported the guy. It was ridiculous.
Good morning, everyone. You will notice that we're scheduled to start at 9 o'clock. I've just been informed that there was an accident and the 404 was closed a bit. So please bear with us. We're going to start about 9:15 because we do want people to come in. And so we're just going to start about 9:10, 9:15 or so. Okay? Thank you.
I had my pliers in my car.
Raising your hand. You,
Where?
just raise your hand. But you didn't see it, and then she talked.
Yeah.
You know that feeling. It's like, you don't really.
watching. I'm watching.
Do you want to see by
Wow. By what?
truck?
Oh no, I'm looking. I need to get the wire. I need a wiring diagram.
What the heck is that?
It's a soldier.
Oh.
Okay.
I need a wiring diagram.
Yeah. There's some other people. Yeah. Thank you, though.
Good, how are you? And you?
Do you want to sit here? Here, have a seat. I got the roaming anyway.
$2.
Sure. $5, but 90 days.
There's the toy drive email.
Huh?
There's a toy drive. Did you toy drive? Toy drive? Toy drive. Yeah.
Yes. No, I thought you guys were something, so this is for Remington, right?
It is for Remington, but it's...
We're filing here too.
Well, yeah, because it's Toy Mountain and
Yeah.
getting the mayor to...
Okay, cool. So that's, yeah, I know you're getting it, but as far as I know, it's just easy, right?
I think just add it in this line. That's coming.
I'll call you when I'm done. Hopefully you're at the office.
It's out of control. You know what, when you get back over to the camera?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, today, sometime today.
Is she hired?
You need a tripod, huh?
Is she here?
I have no idea.
What's the device? Is that to
Might be
record?
working for me or anything like
No,
that.
but they hired a photographer.
Yeah, that's her.
No, just recording the camera.
So,
How long?
does she know that we've got the city? Like, I'll find out.
How long?
Maybe 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours.
Is it 10 hours of drive?
It's not good to have the backup though.
You want recording that? I don't think you would.
Recording both, no?
Usually the camera is safe. But
Yeah.
what's the purpose of the video?
It's a human resource. It's an HR event. Lots of speakers, and so then they use it, and I just give him the footage, and he does the editing. I used to have a different camera, but I don't have it anymore.
Let's see. Because the recorder, you have it, it might not have too many equipment accessory put together. There's more risk.
Yeah. Okay, see you.
Is she out there?
Yeah, I was actually.
Okay.
thought it went out. Thanks.
Okay, so as I promised that we were running a bit late, and we're not going to wait for the mayor because I know he's in the building. I saw him this morning. What we're going to do is I'm just going to pass this off now to our MC, Jim Lang. So why don't we start the process? Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what this is. Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this special event, Invisible No More, the time to end violence against women. Thank you for all coming out today for this special day. My name is Jim Lang from 105.9 in the region, and this is a very special day for me because, you know, 30 years ago when the horrible tragedy happened at L'École Polytechnique, I was just a single guy, and it didn't really make sense to me. And now my wife and I are parents to teenage daughters in high school, and 2 years from now, our oldest daughter is going to be in university a long way from home, and we won't be able to watch her, and we won't be able to be around her 24 hours a day to make sure she's safe. One day, an event like this will not be necessary in Canadian society, but unfortunately, and thank you to Nirmala and Frank Scarpitti and everybody for making this happening, we need days like this to remind us that violence against women is completely and totally unacceptable, and we need to eradicate it from today's society. First, I'd like to introduce a special person, Suzanne Smoke, also known as Golden Eagle Woman. Suzanne is a member of the Alderville First Nation Mississaugas of Rice Lake, the Bear Clan, the Anishinaabe Water Walker, and shares teachings on the importance of our sacred water. She is an artist, fashion designer, curator, and educator. She works with several organizations, is a member of AIM, teaches world religion and Native studies as a guest lecturer at York University, Seneca College, Trent University, and acts as a conduit to build the right relationships between the Indigenous sovereign peoples of Canada and the rest of all of us in this great country, and now the executive director of Bindagen Healing and Arts, a nonprofit group. Ladies and gentlemen, Suzanne Smoke doing a recognition ceremony of our Indigenous lands.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional territory that we stand in. This is called Dish with One Spoon territory, and it is a treaty between the Mississauga Nation, the Métis Nation, and the Haudenosaunee people. This Dish with One Spoon represents that this is that Great Lakes area, and this is one dish that we all eat from. As immigrants and settlers have arrived to our region, we have welcomed them into this treaty. So all of this traditional territory is Anishinaabe, Mississauga, and Haudenosaunee treaty territory, and we welcome each and every one of you here. In keeping with our traditions of the sovereign nation, I'm going to offer a smudging ceremony. I'm burning sage, which is a plant medicine given to us by Creator, and I'm going to offer it to the 4 directions, and those four directions represent the 4 directions of man, the 4 colors of man, and the 4 elements, and all of us coming together to stop this violence against Indigenous women. I stand here today before you representing the over 4,520 missing, murdered, and Indigenous women taken in this country. This sage is representative of the smoke rising to Creator and carrying our prayers. When I hold this smudge and when I pray for the 4 directions of man, I'm praying for each and every one of you in your next 7 generations. I'm going to sing the Nibi song, and the Nibi song is the water song because we are all come from the water. When I see each and every one of you, I don't differentiate between race, creed, or color. I see 90% water and 10% mineral. So with that, I'm going to sing the Nibi song. And what happens to the water happens to all of us. Nibi gizageigo gemigwecho enemigo nija enemigo Nibi gizageigo gemigwecho enemigo nija enemigo Nibi gizageigo gemigwecho enemigo nija enemigo. And we usually sing 4 rounds, but I'm going to leave that 4th round for our sisters in spirit. And I say, Chimigwech, Minewachoni, water is life.
Ladies and gentlemen, Suzanne Smoke, thank you very much. And next I'd like to introduce someone very special, Michelle White. Michelle's a singer, songwriter, musician, a classically trained pianist, started her musical journey at the age of 5. A self-proclaimed music nerd. It's good to have another nerd in the house. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle honed her skills on the flute and the saxophone, spending many years in jazz and gospel bands. Once Michelle began to sing, well, that was it. She fell in love with it. In the fall of 2017, Michelle felt the call to take a leap of faith and pursue music full-time. After 14 years of working with York Region special needs students in the school board by day and then working in music at night, now it's music 24/7. And she's also part of the Cornerstone Christian Community Church right here in Markham. By night, Michelle can be found rocking her big hair, her words, putting hot sauce and everything, and making music sing. And she was incredible at the Markham Expo. Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle White with the singing of our national anthem.
Please stand and join me.
Michelle White, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Michelle. What a lovely voice, of course. Up next, we'd like to introduce someone very special, the key to making this day happen, Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong. In addition to being the first South Asian woman to become a regional councillor in the city of Markham, she's a highly regarded attorney with a BA specialist degree in political science from the U of T, Queen's University, and Osgood Law School. I don't know if I've ever met anyone that educated before, not in radio. She's been actively participating as a member of several groups, associations within Markham and York Region. She's the past chairperson of the Markham's Arts Council, past president of the Markham Unionville Rotary Club. Nirmala Armstrong was awarded the prestigious Queen's Golden Jubilee Medal in 2002 and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2012 for her outstanding contribution to the community in which we live in. Please welcome Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I do know, and I've indicated before, that there was a delay, and we expect our chair for York Region, Wayne Emerson, to be here, as well as our mayor, who should be here any minute now. So today we're here to remember a tragic moment, and since then, things that have been continuing, but at the same time, the community coming together to lend a hand. So, Invisible No More, End Violence Against Women. We're here to talk about this because we need to keep on remembering. We need to understand that it still exists. We need to know that people are coming together so that at some point in our lifetime, this could be eradicated. So I am only going to try to help you remember. So I'm going to take you back to December 6, 1989. I don't know if you'll remember where you were, but I was in my 4th year at UFT doing a specialist degree in political science when this happened. And I heard that the École Polytech massacre, which is also known as the Montreal Massacre, was a mass shooting at the École Polytech in Montreal, Quebec, that occurred today, 1989. Now, many of times people do not want to mention the individual's name. So today I am going to respect that. So, an armed male person shot 28 people, killing 14 women before committing suicide. And I know that we all know about that situation and how this individual divided the women from the men. Not only did these 14 women were killed, but subsequent to this incident, the people who were affected by this, a year later, committed suicide, some of them as well. And the reason that we're told why they committed suicide is because of the negative impact, the physical, social, financial, and psychological consequences, and the post-traumatic stress disorder. And how did we know that their suicide was a result of that incident? Because they too left suicide notes. And that's what they indicated in their suicidal notes. So since 1991, the anniversary of the massacre has been designated the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. As you could see, the federal government took initiative and they looked at gun control and other things to help women in this crisis situation. But at the same time, they started off with the white roses. The white rose symbolizes that moment. And as a result of the white roses, there, in 2014, the Order of White Rose was established, and that is a grant or a scholarship of $30,000 that would help a female engineering student graduate. So today, we have in front of us the 14 roses. If I can ask the females that have the roses in front of them to please walk with me to the table that's in front where we have the picture of the 14 women that were killed. And if we can just lay the roses on that table. And then if all of us could stand up for a minute of silence, and then we will continue with our event. So please, ladies, join me. And if we could just have 1 minute of moment of silence, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nirmala. That was extremely touching and very much an inspiration to a lot of people in this area. Thank you very, very much. While we wait for the arrival of the mayor, we're going to skip a little bit and go to someone we'd like to introduce. Umberto Corolla is the executive director of White Ribbon. Umberto Corolla is the executive director, and his current work is focused on developing educational strategies to engage men and boys in promoting gender equality, healthy masculinities, and preventing violence against women. In addition to his work in Canada and the United States, Umberto has provided support to the government, the UN, and countries around the planet. Would you please welcome Umberto Corolla to the microphone? Umberto?
Thank you for that introduction, and good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. I bring greetings on behalf of White Ribbon. It's a tremendous honor to be here with you today to remember and to pledge to act to end violence against women. Today we remember and honor the memories of the 14 women murdered at l'École Polytechnique de Montréal. And we pledge to continue working hard to end all forms of violence against women. In 1991, as the second anniversary of the Montreal massacre approached, 3 men in Toronto came up with a campaign and a symbol to represent men's commitment to end violence against women. To this day, the white ribbon symbolizes a men's pledge to never commit, condone, or remain silent about that violence. Since then, the white ribbon has become one part of an emerging global effort of men and women who are looking at engaging men and boys in promoting gender equality and ending violence against women and girls. Our efforts are focused on educating young people, raising public awareness, working in partnership with women's organizations, and most importantly, challenging all men to examine their own beliefs, behaviors, and attitudes towards gender-based violence. We believe that men and boys need to join efforts with women and girls to bring about the transformational change that we need to achieve an end to this violence. Men have both a role and responsibility to eliminate violence against women and girls. Gender-based violence is a complex and complicated issue involving a wide range of factors embedded in culture, economy, law, war, and conflict, and most importantly, our cultural constructions of masculinities. Our success will only be assured by how well we work in partnership with others doing this work, but particularly the women's movement. We have a great deal to learn from women's organizations who bring a history and an acute understanding of gender dynamics to the work. Providing alternatives to existing gender dynamics necessitates new models of cooperation between everyone. There are many challenges to this work. Many of the current efforts are small-scale and time-limited. Change of this nature will require long-term commitment. The work needs to be multi-sectoral and intersectional. We need to recognize and address the multiple ways in which different forms of discrimination impact women and men's lives, and therefore increase the risk for experiencing or using gender-based violence. Local and targeted intervention strategies need to be taken to scale. After all, we are trying to change cultural constructions that have evolved over thousands of years. But there's also hope. Most importantly, as witnessed by White Ribbon, there are hundreds of thousands of men who are ready to assume their role and responsibility in promoting gender equality and ending violence against women and girls. But we must call on them and inspire them to be part of the global change. Effective solutions are as much about empowerment, education, and reclaiming safe spaces for women and girls as it is about dismantling male privilege, deconstructing gender stereotypes, and providing healthy alternatives for men and boys. It is as much about support, intervention, and economic independence for women and girls as it is about education, prevention, and providing the tools for effective intervention for men and boys. We have heard recently from thousands of women about their experiences with harassment and sexual assault. These stories are not new, but as a society, I feel we are starting to pay more attention. In response to the Me Too campaign, many men are being asked to make a pledge to help end all forms of gender-based violence. The I Will campaign encourages all of us guys to think about the things we can do to make a difference. So I would like to leave you with some I Will pledges and encourage all of you to think about at least 3 things you can do today and every day to make a difference. I will never commit, condone, or remain silent about sexual violence, harassment, and all forms of gender-based violence. I will examine, reflect on, and challenge my own privilege, power, attitudes, beliefs, actions, and behaviors that may contribute to the problem. I will be a good role model and demonstrate respectful, inclusive, safe, and healthy behavior towards women and girls. I will model good behavior for the young people around me, including my sons, my brothers, my nephews, all the women and girls in my life and in my community, the young people I teach and coach, and all my peers. I will challenge systems of oppression and discrimination in my workplace, in my places of worship, in the institutions that I'm a part of, in the media, and in my community. I will believe, support, and stand in solidarity with survivors of sexual violence, harassment, and gender-based violence everywhere, today and every day. I'm going to end with a brief video that talks about men's roles. It's from a global organization that White Ribbon is a founding member of, and I sit on the board of directors of the Global Men Engaged Alliance.
Why are you crying, Mike? Man up.
That's a woman's role. That's not a man's role.
C'est garçon yé. All right? N'importe madame, c'est pour tendre qui ça ou même cap dio.
lavamos, planchamos, cocinamos, limpiamos.
Spreading my seed, that's what being a man's supposed to be.
You can't let your woman punk you like that in the streets.
¿Qué tú estás haciendo ahí cambiándole los pampas al muchacho? Está loco el muchacho. Usted es un hombre de la casa, de la madre que lo hace.
If you don't keep your wife in line, if she doesn't follow what you say, then you're weak.
We all know that's BS.
I think it's crap.
In my opinion, none of us are born with these ideas.
It's old school, man. You know, it's 1920, 1950 shit, yo.
我不相信这些东西.
الأمور يجب عليها أن تتغير من أجل أن تتحسن الأوضاع.
It's not just idealism that we're discussing. We're discussing real flesh and blood human beings that are your brothers, your sisters.
Domestic violence has really left a permanent mark on my life.
Men still control society on a certain level. I've seen it with my wife, and I've seen her be judged and not be given opportunities.
As a young child, I was always told that, a girl ought to do this, she ought to live this way.
And I don't want my daughter to feel like that.
We want a world where men and women are treated equally.
And to do that, you need to work with men.
We can't just say that gender equality is something that women should work on.
C'est nous-mêmes ensemble qui besoin changer.
We're working with men to improve the lives of women and girls and families and communities.
To change what they think it is to be a man.
To change gender stereotypes, to break social norms, and to promote gender equality.
I ask myself every day, what can I do to be part of the solution?
My father was never there for me, and I don't want to be like that. I want to be different.
Vamos acá. Yo quiero enseñarle que puedo cambiar el mundo. Y si yo le puedo enseñar eso a él, él lo puede enseñar a su hijo. Y para la generation de él.
Tout bagaille a changé. Pichi. We as men need to step up.
And we need to support them
so that we can change the world.
Thank you very much.
I guess it's only fitting that just over an hour ago, before Umberto took to the microphone, Time announced their Person of the Year as the Silence Breakers. All the brave men and women who decided to step up and speak out against exactly what you're talking about. So again, congratulations. Before we hear from Suzanne Smoke again and our Mayor Frank Scarpitti, I'd like to ask Wayne Emerson, the Chair of York Region, to say a few words. Mr. Emerson?
Good morning. Well, good morning, everyone. And on behalf of York Regional Council and the Municipality of York, I'm honored to be here this morning. Today we pause and reflect on lives that were tragically taken on the day in 1989. 14 lives lost, 10 injured on the day we as a country will certainly never forget. Today I'm proud to say that the city of Markham becomes the first city in York Region to proclaim December 6th at the National Day of Remembrance and Action to End Violence. I wish to extend my special thanks to the City of Markham, Mayor Frank Scarpitti, and especially Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong for supporting and pushing forward today's proclamation. Councillor Armstrong in particular, I applaud you for your bravery in coming forward and sharing your own personal story of violence. Regrettable, we know Councillor Armstrong's story is only one of many, many stories of violence against women. Stories across our country and in homes and neighborhoods right here in York Region. Far too many women suffer at the hands of those loved and lost. In fact, today, 1 in 4 women in York Region experience abuse. York Region Council is committed to creating safe and caring communities. And part of that commitment means ensuring women of all ages feel safe and secure in the communities they choose to call home. And more importantly, that they have access to supports and services when they need them the most. Community support is vital in ensuring women and children find the safety and support needed to rebuild their lives. Yellow Brick House is York Region's largest provider of service to women and children experiencing violence and abuse for 39 years. Each day, women and children are given the opportunity to escape a life of violence and a chance to rebuild. Last year, more than 5,000 women and children were served through the Yellow Brick House. Women and children who otherwise may have never had the strength or courage to leave a harmful home situation. From their 24/7 crisis line, emergency shelter service on personal and legal counseling services, Yellow Brick House is instrumental in ensuring women across our region have the skills and knowledge to take back their lives. Along with the support of a number of community agencies, Belinda's Place offers vulnerable women the opportunity to rebuild their lives through changing services to promote stability, dignity, and self-reliance. Yellow Brick House and Belinda's Place are just two examples of the types of programs and services in York Region designed to embrace and support women. Each year, York Region provides important funding for community agencies to maintain vital services for low to moderate income residents. York Region continues to be one of the largest funders of local non-for-profit agencies to ensure a strong network of vital support and support services for our residents. And so today, on this day of remembrance, recognition of those 14 lives taken in 1989, I am proud to represent York Region and recognize the programs and services available for residents that promote gender equality, safety, and dignity for all. Thank you.
On Monday, it'll be 4 years at 105.9. The region's been on the radio serving York Region. As important as the equipment that we use, we wouldn't be on the air without the support of people like our next speaker, the Mayor of Markham, the Honourable Frank Scarpitti. He is going to speak today the importance of why we're all here and why we all need to take a stand against violence against women. His resume speaks for itself. Elected mayor in 2006, 2010, and 2014. He's Markham's second longest serving mayor in the history of this community. But more importantly, he's a father and a parent to 3 children. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mayor of Markham, Frank Scarpitti.
Well, thank you very much, Jim and Annie. Welcome to everyone. And I know that many people have been introduced, so I say welcome to all of our special guests that are here today. And certainly to all of those in attendance, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And I really am here, and I want to welcome Chair Emerson as well. I think when he speaks that there's no room for violence against women. It's in every municipality in the region, every corner, every community, every neighborhood. And I'm here today really kind of humbled and honored to be the co-chair of this outstanding event. And I want to say, as the Chair indicated, a special thank you to Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong. As Chair indicated, Nirmala has told her story, and I think she's told her story to inspire other women, not so much to that they have to give of themselves in that same way, because everyone deals with challenges in their lives, but certainly to give women the courage to come forward and get help and to get support. And I know it's not easy talking about your own personal life, perhaps particularly when we face bumps in that road. And I think Regional Councillor Armstrong has done it with tremendous courage. And I took out time this morning prior to getting to work just to read the article one more time that was in the Markham Economist and Sun, and to try and really see the emotion behind the words and to begin to understand the experiences. And I just want to say on behalf of men and women, thank you very much, Regional Councillor Armstrong, for telling your personal story, for giving the account of what happened to you, and to relive those memories and those emotions in doing so, and hope to really inspiring so many women to come forward and maybe not tell their story to the media, but certainly to tell their story to someone. And in doing that, hopefully getting the help that they need. So again, a big hand to Regional Councillor Armstrong for the great work. I want to take a moment just to introduce some members of staff. Now, I typically introduce them because I want to acknowledge them for the great work they do in their jobs here at the City of Markham. But today I want to introduce them because they've been part of the committee that's helped organize this event. And I think it's just one more example of how our public servants here in the City of Markham go beyond what's in their job description. I really thank them for taking the extra time and effort to assist the organization committee in putting on this wonderful opportunity to hear stories, to hear about the positive actions that are taking place in our community, and again, to support victims of violence. So we have Andy Taylor, our Chief Administrative Officer, who is here, Catherine Conrad. Maybe you could just stand and stay standing because I do want people to recognize who you are. Catherine Conrad, our city solicitor. Kimberly Kitteringham, our clerk here at the City of Markham. Trinella Kane, our Commissioner of Corporate Services. And Meg West, who works in the CAO's office. Thank you to them and for the great work that they've done. I also want to take a moment to recognize, and I can't say this for much longer because after a while people say, you got to stop saying you're the former this and of that, but having been just the former chair of York Regional Police, I want to acknowledge Superintendent Fred Moffat, but truly all the men and women of York Regional Police. They have made, I think, an incredible effort to reach out, to work with partners in the community, to make sure that we're working together. And to have, and maybe you'll hear a little bit about this in some of the presentations, but to have a hub where all of the organizations can come together and make sure that together they are effectively stamping out violence against women and children in our community is extremely important in the work that they do. So I thank certainly Chief Jolliffe and the executive team, but I thank the men and women that are out there every day who get that phone call, have to respond to a home and deal with those situations and deal with it not only effectively in making sure that people are safe, but then going beyond just making sure that they're safe in that moment, making sure that they're connected to the various partners in the community so that the women and children can get the support they need. So to Superintendent Moffat and really to the rest of the men and women of York Regional Police, thank you for the great work that you do in our community. So I thank Regional Councillor Armstrong as well for bringing us together and certainly to talking to everyone and really wanting to recognize this day, but just not only to remember victims, but it's I think a big step in remembering the victims, but it's taking what happened there and making sure that we don't allow those circumstances to ever happen in our community, making sure that we're doing everything we can for everyone involved in these situations to ensure that we don't have any more victims in our community. And I think that Regional Councillor Armstrong's story and the effort that's being made here today is one that will encourage women who are victimized by gender-based violence to come forward and in fact to seek the help. Victims of gender-based violence who are with us today, it really is, again, a courageous effort on your part to come forward and to tell your story. And again, not tell your story maybe to a lot of people, but at least to tell your story to one person that hopefully can make the difference in getting you on a new path and you no longer being a victim in your life. And it is, as others have said, with the help of so many organizations, in particular Yellow Brick House, that will, as a community, be there to help women and children who are victims of violence, no matter where they live in the region. So I do want to say a special thank you to Larissa Herenda and the entire team at the Yellow Brick House Women's Shelter for the great work that you do, along with your volunteers. I think you've demonstrated in our community your tireless dedication and, more importantly, your compassion to those that come through your front door. The Yellow Brick House is, in York Region, a sanctuary, a safe haven for women and children escaping turmoil. And as was said, the shelter operates at capacity every day in our community. And there isn't enough room for those that do face violence in their personal life. And I just want to say thank you for the great work that you do. And I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I hope we can put you out of business one day. I hope that we can live in a society where women do not have to fear violence in their home, violence at their place of work, violence in the place where they're trying to better their education and become more productive citizens in our society. So today, as was indicated, we also honor and remember the 14 women who tragically lost their lives and the 10 that were injured at L'École Polytechnique in Montreal in 1989. It was a heinous, senseless act of violence against women. And really, that's the only reason they were victims, was because they were women. And as all of us have women in our lives, you know, it's quite something to think that in a society today, whether it's the tragic end of lives or the constant victimization of women still exists, it is really difficult to understand. We live supposedly in one of the best times in history. We have technology, we have the state-of-the-art equipment, we live in incredible, beautiful communities with so many services. And yet to think that there are still women here in our community, in Markham, in York Region, that face violence, that face threats every single day, is truly a sad commentary on our progress as a society. Yes, there is a lot to be proud of things that we're doing, but there's still so much more work to do. And it's in that remembrance, some 28 years later, that we say that this is not right, and that we honor those women because they did nothing wrong. They were pursuing their dreams, their hopes, and someone decided to take all of that away from them. And I'm pleased to say that the city of Markham is the only municipality in York Region, the first to recognize this day and make the proclamation. You know, but I think we need to be reminded of what that event did, not only to the victims, but to the parents of those girls, to the people that hoped to be a part of their life after they were finished school, to the communities that were impacted by the fact that they are no longer part of that community. We have to remember them, and in remembering them, take the positive action to say that we want to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen in any community in Canada ever again. And so we have to take a strong stand against gender-based violence. It shows that as a community we won't tolerate violence, and that we will open up our hearts and support brave women who are trying to get away from the violence that they live with. Women who are determined to live a better life for themselves, and for many cases, their children, because they know that their children are not only at risk, but even after they're able to get help. And you heard some of the speakers on the video. The legacy of domestic violence lives on much longer than just coming forward and trying to get help. So as the chair indicated, there's still 1 in 4 women in York Region that experience abuse. Domestic violence is a serious crime, and it's taken very seriously by York Regional Police. There is no place for it in our society, in our organizations, and in our community. And I hope that anyone who bears witness to any domestic violence will come forward. And that's not just victims. That's us as neighbors. That's us as teachers in a school. That's us as a coach of a hockey team or a soccer team. That's us when we're out in the community shopping. We need to step forward. When we know that someone is facing that in their life, we need to make sure that they're safe. And so it takes courage for us to step into someone's private life. You know, we as much as we like to feel we're connected, in many ways we're not. We always feel that, well, you know, that's not my place to step into it. And I think I want to encourage women, because women have a tough time approaching other women and asking them, are you a victim of violence? Is something happening in your life that you need to get help with? And I think it's very positive today that we're seeing both men and women and young girls in our audience today. But all of us need to step forward when we see something happening in our community before it's too late. And we will do everything in our community to support those that are victims. And certainly we're doing everything we can through York Regional Police and other organizations to stop domestic violence. When a woman makes a decision to escape a violent home, she's taking the first step. It's a very important step. It's a step that Nirmala Armstrong took. And as difficult as the past may have been, taking that step is a step in the right direction, not only for themselves, but for their families. And when she takes that step, when a woman finally takes that step to ask for help, I think we have to make sure that she's not alone, that she is supported, and that she gets the help that she and her family needs. And giving victims of gender-based violence a sense of safety and security really does lead to a sense of empowerment, something many women of violence don't feel. And I'd like to also say a special thank you to those that have made today possible. As much as there's been an organizing committee, I want to say a special thank you to all the sponsors. I know they're being recognized later in the program, but without your financial support, we wouldn't have been able to come together as a community to be able to share our stories and to encourage women to come forward. So I thank you for the support that you've given today. And thank you to all those for bringing out the issue of domestic violence out of the shadows, and certainly for helping women seek the promise of a better life. And together, I think we can build a more caring, but a more safer community. And that does take partnerships, and that does take the opportunity for all of us to not only come together to talk, because I think in many respects, if that's all we do today, it'll be a waste of our time. It is that call to action for all of us to support organizations in our community that do the work every day, to support the York Regional Police in the work that they do, but also to ensure that each and every one of us do our part in making sure that women are safe in our community. Thank you to everyone that's here. Thank you for taking the time out to be here. And I know that later we'll be raising a flag in remembrance of those women that lost their lives. And let's hope that we never have to recognize that type of an event in any community in Canada ever again. Thank you for being here today.
This time I'd like to welcome Suzanne Smoke to the stage. Suzanne's going to speak about the issues facing Aboriginal women in Canada.
Jim, while she's doing that, I just want to recognize Councillor Logan Canapathy, who is also here. Thank you.
Bojo, I'm the Executive Director of Bindagan Healing and Arts. We are a new nonprofit agency here in York Region. We provide culturally sensitive and culturally appropriate healing methods for Indigenous women, children, and their families. When I see these 14 roses sitting here, I want you to imagine this room filled with 4,520 white roses for my fallen sisters. Gord Downey said it best when he said, there's something really wrong here in Canada, and Canadians have been trained not to care about Indigenous women in this country. It has been happening since 1492. It has been happening for the last 150 years of Confederation, that we as Indigenous women are one of the most highly victimized groups all across the world, here in Canada, here in our sovereign land. We come from the land, we come from the water. We are obstacles to that land and water, and unfortunately, we are disappearing at an alarming rate. And this isn't because we are victims of our own demise. This is not a cultural issue. Domestic violence and violence against Indigenous women is not something that we own in our communities. It is not something that Canadians can absolve themselves of responsibility. When we talk about violence against our Indigenous women and gender-based violence, we talk about the dish with one spoon territory. The Indian Act in 1969 that was implemented took away the rights of Indigenous women. It took away my identity, it took away my culture, it took away my land base. We are triply oppressed, being Indigenous, being women, and being women of color from our land base. When you take the women out of our communities, it will cease to exist. It is one way that Canada sought to get rid of the Indian problem in Canada, was to get rid of the Indigenous women. All across this nation, I can tell you that every day through social media, we are posting another woman who has gone missing in our communities. This is not a domestic violence issue, this is Canada's issue. Since the fur trade, Indigenous women have been left by the wayside. We are at the highest incarceration rates. We are at the highest dropout rates. We are at the highest domestic violence rates. All of the agencies that are out there working for violence against violence against women, I want to ask you to please include elders, healers, medicine people, Shkalbe, our Ashkabewas, our men who are our fire keepers. They are part of your toolbox and resource people to heal our nation of people. If your agencies do not engage with the First Nations communities and with our elders and our healers and our knowledge keepers, then how can you heal our nations and how can you heal our women? How can you work with our communities with no knowledge and understanding? I'm asking each and every one of you to take action in including the voice of Indigenous women, because it has been lost for the last 500 years. I have a 19-year-old daughter. Olga Magishiko is my name. Head woman of the Sky World. I remember 5 years ago with my daughter leaving from the community, jumping in a boat in the middle of the night, rowing with one hand and my daughter in the other, leaving from a community that was rife with violence, assault, sexual abuse, all a result of the intergenerational trauma of colonization and loss of culture and loss of land. I, as an Indigenous woman, when I leave my partner, I leave with nothing. I have no matrimonial rights. I have nothing. That is gender-based violence. That is discrimination through the Indian Act that has been perpetuated against Indigenous women for the last 150 years. We have to make changes. We as Indigenous women are doing work all around this nation, protecting the water. We sing for the water, we pray for the water. The molecular structure of the water is actually changing with the voice of Indigenous women. When we walk around these lakes, and when we're praying, and when we're singing, and when we're carrying those copper vessels, we're praying for all of your next 7 generations. My daughter Cedar knows those songs to cleanse the water. She knows those songs that will cleanse Mother Earth. But unfortunately, she is 9 times more likely to become a victim of violence than anyone here in this room. As a mother and a life giver, my role and responsibility is to put a good foundation in front of her. And I'm counting on each and every one of you in this room to look at my daughter and see the importance and the value of who she is as an Indigenous woman in her own sovereign land. When we sing and pray, it's for your next 7 generations. I need you to look in the face of my daughter and know the value and importance and how magnificent she is to each and every one of you in your next 7 generations. We have to end the violence against Indigenous women in this country. It can't be put on the back burner any longer. And you have to be inclusive. With those 14 roses, we want to honor those women. I want to look around this room and see 4,520 roses for my fallen sisters. Jimmy Gwetch.
Sorry about that, Suzanne. We want to rip you off for your standing ovation, Walter. I'd like to welcome Lauren Calder right now, the Supervisory Duty Council at the North York Family Courthouse, the busiest family courthouse in all of Canada. She earned her law degree at the University of Windsor, called to the bar in 2014. She's passionate about advocating for low-income people in Ontario, and she's a huge fan of The Bachelor. Please welcome Lauren Calder.
Thank you very much for including legal aid today in the very important discussions that we are having. Being at the busiest family law courthouse in Canada means that on a daily basis I am working with survivors of domestic violence. Some days are exclusively spent serving survivors of domestic violence as they come to court and attempt to deal with their family law problems, which can be hard enough on its own. Let alone adding in the complexity and high conflict that comes with having a partner where there's domestic violence at play. So setting that groundwork a little bit, I wanted to talk a bit about Legal Aid Ontario's policy and mandate when it comes to domestic violence, just so that everyone is aware that that does exist. It is a bit of a living organism, so to speak, so we are always having consultations with various interest groups and various stakeholders to make sure that as we move forward with these decisions, we are including all the appropriate people and that we are moving forward in the direction that the frontline staff really needs, as we're the ones who are often the first touch point for women when they are entering the family court process. So at Legal Aid, we try and offer immediate assistance to survivors of domestic violence. We have a lot more discretion when it comes to our financial eligibility thresholds. We are publicly funded, so like everything, we are accountable for the dollars spent and services allocated, but we do have a lot more discretion when it comes to assisting survivors of domestic violence. And the third part of that is that we are very clear that our frontline team of lawyers need to be always connecting with local community resources to make sure we are assisting the women and families who come forward with kind of the bigger picture part of what they are going through, because their legal piece is only one part of that. So by saying that, one of the main things that we try and do is ensure that any of the women and families that we're connecting with can be put forward and referred for a legal aid certificate. So many people in the room will probably know what that means, but basically that means that the province of Ontario will fund the litigation for survivors of domestic violence. So they will have a lawyer to meet with them, draft all their materials, prepare their paperwork, and then actually appear in court as their lawyer all the way through the litigation, including if it goes to trial, which can be a very daunting experience for anyone, but especially survivors of domestic violence. Like I said, we do have financial cutoffs. They're available on the Legal Aid website, but I guess the part I wanted to speak about a little bit is that it goes based on the family size. So the women and the children that she is with are included in that. And then in situations of domestic violence, we often have up to $10,000 worth of discretion that we can use. So I like to make sure that we are promoting that and communicating that. That information is at the courthouse, but I also think it's important that we're sharing that with any service providers, any survivors out there of domestic violence who are looking into legal aid. It is very important that even though some people may think, oh, my income's a little bit over, is there any point in applying? We encourage everybody, and our frontline teams are trained to put forward and have them make the application for legal aid, because oftentimes legal aid will use their discretion and will grant the legal aid certificate. And that is so important because on top of everything else that they have going on with their families, it can be very hard when they are trying to do it piecemeal. So if they don't qualify for a legal aid certificate, we will of course investigate other options that they may have, but that's really the one that we try and promote when dealing with survivors of domestic violence. The other thing I wanted to touch on just quickly is that we also have a phone service that not everyone is aware of. So we have lawyers who are on the phone for survivors of domestic violence, as they can't always physically get to a courthouse for very obvious reasons, of whether they're still in the relationship or whether they've recently left and are living in safe housing with their children, especially women in rural areas, cannot always access a courthouse. So there is a phone number. I have some flyers here. I have these little cards. I can leave them with Nirmala. We can make sure that they're distributed. It's literally a phone call away, and there are lawyers on the phone who can help you start the process and who can at least give you some legal advice with how to get things started. I will also say we work very closely with a lot of our partners in Toronto, Red Door, Luke's Place, and also the Barbara Schleifer Clinic. So we are always triaging and connecting as much as we can with the other service providers in our area. So I just wanted to emphasize that we are very, very passionate about assisting survivors of domestic violence and their families as they enter the family court process, which in and of itself can be very, very challenging. So I would just encourage the service providers, anyone in the room who's a survivor of domestic violence, to access that information in a way that is safe for you and in a way that is appropriate for your situation. And we really genuinely are there to help. And there's a lot that we can do for you. So please access this if you can, and we really strive to help and make the process as manageable as possible for survivors of domestic violence as they go through the family court process. So thank you for including me today.
Thank you for providing women with hope and support and getting their lives back on track. Next up is a student from Maple. Melanie Thompson is in grade 12 at Maple High. She's part of the school's slam poetry team. Her work centers on issues affecting women and girls around the world. She's passionate about activism and female empowerment, and she hopes to incite change in the world around her. Melanie Thompson, now to perform a monologue about the issues of violence against women. Melanie?
It took him 6 months to build the house. Red bricked and surrounded by the white picket fence he had painted himself. He handed me the keys and then walked in. It took him 5 months to rebuild the house. He said the bricks being used were invincible, that they would stand up against anything, and that they could protect me from every imaginable danger. It took him 4 months to paint the house. He would go back and forth into town each day to get paint cans and paint brushes and rollers and drop sheets, forgetting the amount of materials he had stockpiled in the basement. Every time he left, I was forced to climb deeper and deeper into the hole he had told me to dig that very first day, my body floating to the surface upon his return as if he controlled my entire being. It took him 3 months to renovate the house. When it was finally finished, I fell asleep on the floor, listening to the pitter-pattering of rain as it hit the roof of my brand new brick home. Eventually, the rain came down so hard and so fast that the roof couldn't help but spring a leak. I floated along the stream that had collected from the thunderstorm inside, dissolving everything as the water came in waves. Walls crumbled and bricks disintegrated, and as I came up for air, I saw a shadow looming over me, shoulders shaking with familiar laughter as he stood there and watched me drown. It took me 2 months to learn how to swim. For what felt like an eternity, I floated down the river that always seemed to paint my face with tears and my body shades of black and blue. My stomach ached with exhaustion, my stomach ached with hunger, and my hands shook with exhaustion, but I followed the water's course nonetheless. The river forged through peaks and forged through valleys until one day, it dried up completely. It took me 1 month to starve. I felt myself shrivel up as I could do nothing but lay in the scorching hot sun. My body so broken I couldn't move even a fraction of an inch. Every time I would so much as twitch a finger, I felt eyes boring into the back of my skull, pressing me even further into the ground. His harsh gaze and sharp words kept me there, helpless, until molecules of water exited my body one by one and left me as nothing but bone.
Holy times, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. At this time, I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to be part of this important event. Everyone here is doing such incredible work. Congratulations to Nirmala, Armstrong, Mary Scarpitti, Yellow Brick House, and everybody involved in this great day. And thank you for bringing awareness to a crucial issue in society. I'd like to pass the baton now to Angie Seth, who will see the rest of this inaugural event. She's a weekend anchor at the Global News at 6, a strong advocate for women's rights, children's rights, the fight against domestic violence. She's currently working on a 2-year project with the South Asian Women's Center titled There Is No Honor in Violence Against Women and Girls. She's an award winner, she's a marathon runner, she's a parent, and she's a wife. Angie Seth, Global News.
Thank you very much, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Jim a big round of applause. Thank you so much. It is a great honor to be here today. I wish I were here for other reasons, but we seem to join together every single year to talk about the same thing. And we hope that each and every year we say we're making headway, and maybe we are. Maybe we are. Maybe there will be a year when we can all gather and talk about how violence against women is a thing of the past, and how the men and women and the children in our lives are talking about this in our history books, and something that would never, ever happen again, and that we know that we would never raise a hand on anyone. But unfortunately, we are here today still talking about it. But when I talk about headway, we are making some headway. I just learned today that every year, Time Magazine marks the Person of the Year. Well, this year, the Person of the Year are our silence breakers. All of the women who came forward. Time Magazine is honoring them this year behind that Me Too campaign. So that, I think, is some headway. December 6th is an important day to remember and reflect on gender-based violence. The women of the École Polytechnique in Montreal were killed because they were women. Not because they did anything wrong, not because they hurt someone, not because they were racist or discriminatory, but because they were women trying to get an education, trying to live their lives, trying to be equal in society. Every day, women in Canada of all ages and backgrounds are impacted by violence. It is not just marking 28 years. We know we are marking hundreds and hundreds of years. And we need to acknowledge that, and we need to stop it. It is important for us to come together and do our part to make our communities safe for women and children, but I also say we need to make our society safe for us. We need to make it safe for us. We need to get our children to understand what violence means, what violence does to someone, and how violence can affect them. And these are conversations that I have with my children every single day, because they're in the playground and they're hearing things. My son, one of his closest friends, he's 5 years old. He's 5 years old. Both of them had a disagreement. And unfortunately, the conversation turned into, when my son said, well, I don't agree with what you're saying, it turned into, well, my daddy is going to come and take a gun and kill you. 5 years old. That's a conversation that should never happen in a schoolyard, ever, anywhere. But he came home and he was really, really, really upset. Now, his response was, well, I'm going to call the police and they're going to shoot your daddy. The shooting part I didn't like, the police part I appreciated. But 5 years old. We need to do more than just have these conversations. We need to see what our children are watching. We need to see what we're watching. We need to see what we're saying and what we're doing and continue to have that conversation so that we're not having that conversation anymore. Today we're going to be hearing from some incredible people through words and through music. Our next guest is an incredible woman, Councillor. She was born to sing and entertain. She grew up in a Jamaican-Canadian home listening to reggae, Motown, gospel, R&B, and then she entered the jazz program at Humber College in the mid-1990s. From there, she embarked upon her dream of performing with well-known musicians, which took her to exciting overseas hotel engagements. Since then, she's sung in many parts of Asia, Europe, North America, and the Caribbean. She's the president of QW Productions, whose mission is to provide outstanding and professional entertainment in a classy, nostalgic atmosphere while providing a platform for artists and musicians to showcase their awesome gift in music. She aims to educate both the public and upcoming artists in the importance of real music and why it needs to be kept alive. And she presents music that touches our hearts, words that mean something. This mandate fits beautifully with her being the co-founder of a not-for-profit organization called KG Group, where she wore the hats of producer and director of the musical Dandelions of the Wind, which premiered in Toronto in February 2017 and received rave reviews. As music and creative arts director at Unionville Alliance Church, she is in charge of all musical and creative aspects of both weekly worship and special events. She works extremely hard. She's dedicated to her church, and is another display of her love for community and her deep level of commitment. With a bright personality and strong vocal abilities, she is one of Toronto's most sought-after session vocalists. She also performs regularly at corporate events. Currently, she's living in the GTA. She's well established in the tight-knit music industry. She is incredible, expressionist, phenomenal, and she's here to inspire. Ladies and gentlemen, she will be singing for us today. I will hold my head up high and wind beneath my wings. Ladies and gentlemen, Councillor.
Thank you very much. This song I'm about to sing is a song that I wrote with two other co-writers, and it was a song that came out of a very challenging time in my life. And so I was able to hold my head up high again. And so I dedicate this song to all women who are in an abusive relationship, who are struggling. This song I dedicate to you. There's freedom to hold my head high. I hold my head high. I hold my head high. Passion, you're the rhythm in my heart. Nothing can take away. My desire is to give myself completely to you every day. Ooh. There's freedom to hold up my head high. Ooh, ooh. I hold my head high. Thank you. This next song I'm going to sing is a Bette Midler song called Wind Beneath My Wings, and I dedicate it to all the women who have died because of domestic violence. Must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let me shine past your way. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory, but you were the one with all the strength. A beautiful face without a name for so long, a beautiful smile to hide the pain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? You're everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. You might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I've got it all here in my heart. Oh, I want you to know that I know the truth. Yes, I do. I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that
ladies and gentlemen. Give her a big round of applause. That was beautiful. When we talk about violence and domestic violence, there are a number of services and individuals that women can go to seek help. And one of the questions that in the stories that I've covered and the women that I have met with, the things that a lot of people have asked me is, well, after the first strike, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they just walk away? And it is so much more complicated than being able to do that. The level of fear and anxiety. What we need to also remind ourselves is we don't know what that situation has been. And we don't know for how long this situation has been going on. So many of these women have no recourse and have feared that they will lose their children, that they will lose their life, that this individual will hunt them down and find them, and many of them do. So there's that great level of fear and concern as to where should they go. And one of the first stories that I had covered on domestic violence, I had met with a woman at the South Asian Women's Center, and they had just helped her get out, and they had provided her with an apartment. And she'd agreed to do an interview with me, and we concealed her identity. We did everything in silhouette. And she was there with a little boy. He must have been about 7 years old. And she was this beautiful woman. And when she talked to me, the one thing, I saw sort of the right side of her face, and then she turned, and her left side was completely bruised. It was completely a different color. She had just had a fresh attack, but she was ready to leave, and she had been there for years. So there are individuals that do get involved that play a huge role in developing that trust. And helping these women, and two of these individuals I'm going to introduce to you right now, who work with a number of these women and listen to their stories and listen to them and don't place judgment. And that's where I sort of ask for those that are in the room to pass on that message, that when we hear about a story about domestic violence, don't jump to the conclusion as to, well, why didn't you just leave? It is nowhere near as easy as simply walking out of the door. Staff Sergeant Cecil Hammond is a member of York Regional Police with 19 years of policing experience. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree with York University with a major in sociology. She's worked in various sections of the organization, such as Special Victims Unit, the Integrated Domestic Violence Unit, and presently she's the officer in charge of the Practical Skills Unit. As the officer in charge of the Integrated Domestic Violence Unit, she managed 15 domestic violence investigators. The Domestic Violence Civilian Liaison oversaw an intimate partner violence investigations with York Region. She also liaised with Crown Attorneys, Victim Witness Assistant Program, Children's Aid, as well as Victim Services of York Region. During her tenure with the Integrated Domestic Violence Unit, Staff Sergeant Hammond also co-chaired the York Region Center for Community Safety. In this capacity, her primary objective was to continue to maintain and develop relationships among other community partners to ensure a multidisciplinary response in the area of intimate partner violence with a focus on empowering and supporting victims. Detective Sergeant Christina Baker has been a member of York Regional Police for 25 years, working in various assignments throughout the police service. She's trained in threat assessment and risk from Simon Fraser University. And in 2011, she coordinated the first Violence Against Women Symposium in partnership with York Regional Police and Women's Shelters. As a member of the South Asian Family Services Organizing Committee, she played a key role in the 2012 Impact of Family Violence Conference, a South Asian perspective hosting over 300 delegates at Seneca College in Markham. And today, she will be sharing the police response for domestic violence in our community and how to address violence against women. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sergeant Cecil Hammond, as well as Detective Sergeant Christina Baker.
Good morning, everyone. Cecile and I are representing over 1,600 police officers in York Region, and some of them are out there on the street today in Markham, keeping our streets safe. We are guided by the mission and vision of our organization to make a difference in our community. Today we're going to be talking about domestic violence. Cecile and I are both going to be talking about the response, but before we do that, I just want to let you know what that means to us. So there's some definitions that are very distinct in the work that we do, particularly in the area of domestic violence. I just want to say on a personal note, I feel so honored to be here today with the special guests and to the audience as well. What we've heard so far today, I've been watching the faces in the audience, and I've seen the emotion there, and I just want to say that that's okay. We're all feeling it, and it's okay to take a deep breath. When we talk about domestic violence in regards to the police response, we kind of define it as intimate partner violence, because it's important to distinguish that it's something that's occurring between two people who have been or are presently involved in an intimate relationship, regardless of whether a criminal offense has occurred. And that's important to define the kind of response that the police are going to have, and I'll get into that in just a moment. What an intimate relationship means for the police in these types of investigations is a relationship between opposite and same-sex partners, included but not limited to current and former dating relationships, online relationships, current and former common law or married couples, or instances where one person feels they are in a relationship regardless of whether or not there has been sexual activity. So I see some young people in the audience today, and those definitions are really important, because the police response to domestic violence just doesn't mean intimacy between a man and a woman. It could be the perception of the relationship felt by that victim. So when we talk about the police response, domestic violence and violence against women is a priority one call. So what that means for the police is that that does mean that we respond as an emergency. We respond as quickly and as safely as we can, and sometimes that means that we are arriving lights and sirens. And in most circumstances, there'll be more than one officer that's attending, because we aren't quite sure sometimes what we're responding to. We may have received a 911 call from a child in the home, or we may just have a 911 call with an open line and can hear that something is happening in that home. And so it's our job to respond as quickly and safely as possible, and to immediately assess the situation and ensure that everyone is safe. In regards to the investigation, the province of Ontario has set out adequacy standards for police services across Ontario, so that whether domestic violence is happening in Thunder Bay or in Sudbury or in Toronto or in Windsor or here in Markham, the police response will be very similar regardless of what police agency is or police service is responding. So those adequacy standards are very important to us, and they guide our response to domestic violence. As far as the intervention goes, after the investigation is completed, we look at everything. And sometimes, well, I know that that is very hard for a woman to disclose, particularly to a stranger who has just arrived in her home in a very difficult situation with a uniform and a police car and a radio, and we're, doing our thing, and now she needs to disclose what has happened or what has transpired in the relationship up to this point. We know that victims of violence have probably experienced that violence at least 35 times before picking up the phone and calling 911 for the first time. So in most cases, we recognize that there is a history there. So as part of our intervention strategy, legislation in Ontario has guided the police that they are able to lay a charge. It's not up to the victim to do that. If we see that there is violence in the home, we lay the charge, not the victim. And we also engage our community supports, which is very important for that victim and her family. Some of the recent trends that we've seen in reporting over the last few years is the publication of intimate images without consent. So after a relationship ends, unfortunately, some of those images that have been shared between partners then becomes available on the internet. An increase in aging adults reporting abuse as our population ages. An increase in youth reporting because there's more awareness about the issues, and they are also aware of cyberbullying. Disclosed diagnosis of mental health issues, and unfortunately substance abuse. These are some of the trends that we are seeing when we are taking the background from the victims of violence.
Thank you, Christina. In 2016, York Regional Police responded to over 13,000 calls related to simply just to family violence, out of approximately 200,000 calls for the year. Of those 13,000 calls, 5,191 were related to intimate partner violence. And of those calls that we responded to, we laid 1,292 criminal charges. Many of those people that were investigated were repeat offenders. In fact, about 750 of the people charged were repeat offenders. York Regional Police, we're very fortunate to have support of the community, support of the Police Services Board, and we have a specialized unit that is trained in ODARA risk assessment and risk management, and we manage these repeat offenders. They are also trained in the Ontario Death Review Committee domestic violence risk factors set out by the Ontario Chief Coroner's Office. So this specialized team that Christina is now overseeing does go out and investigate these calls, and we are fortunate enough to partner with all of the 27 community agencies that are comprised of the York Region Centre for Community Safety. You heard Mayor Scarpitti refer to the hub. This is what we call the hub, or YRCCS. So it is comprised of those 27 agencies that what they ultimately do is they help adult and child victims of domestic violence and assist them in getting the help that they need by coordinating services and support under one roof. It helps the victims and their families navigate through the justice system, health system, and social system, and it eliminates them from having to keep telling their story over and over again. So a referral is made, whether it comes from York Regional Police, the Integrated Domestic Violence Unit, or many of the other community agencies, or the victim themselves can reach out, whether it be online or a phone call, and seek the support of the program manager at the hub. And she will do an intake meeting, sit down, go through what the various needs are, and they create a single point of entry to help the client to receive that wraparound support and services that they need. And they would tailor the services surrounding their experience and whatever services they need. Part of the hub is also Victim Services of York Region. Victim Services is something for domestic violence calls we automatically refer to VSY. They are able to then, they're available 24/7 if required. They provide crisis counseling or any immediate emotional support, practical assistance, information and referrals to victims of domestic violence, any crime or other tragic circumstances. I just wanted to speak briefly about how you can help and how we can all help. What you can do, what can you do if you know someone who is involved in a violent situation at the home or in an intimate partner situation where you may believe there's something going on but you don't really know. Of course, you're going to encourage that victim to seek the support, but also encourage the offender, the abuser, to go out and seek support, because there are services for these people as well to hopefully have some intervention. There's a lot of agencies, whether it's the hub, Victim Services, or the police. Just do whatever you can, make sure they're safe. And if you do not feel that they're safe, I would really strongly suggest that you have to call 911, and we will come out, and as Christina mentioned, the legislation and the required mandatory steps that we take, and based on the information that we assess at the scene, and if a criminal offense has been committed, we will lay the charge.
Thank you, Cecile. We still face some challenges in regards to our response to domestic violence. We understand the language and cultural barriers. I believe MCIS is here today, and they are one of our service providers that we rely on to provide interpretation services. We understand that there are emotional attachments and fear felt by the victims in these circumstances, and we try our best to navigate with them through the services that are available to ensure that they have their needs met. And we also understand that there is sometimes a feeling of isolation and lack of access to adequate or affordable housing and things like that. So that's why working with our community partners such as Yellow Brick House are so important in our response to domestic violence. Thank you.
So you got a lot of information there in terms of what is out there to help women, to help anyone, really, anyone that may be concerned about somebody, anyone that may know someone that may be in a dangerous situation, or for those that are. There is a lot of help that is out there. It just comes down sort of to that trust and that willingness to say, okay, I'm going to go and seek that help. And that's where we all sort of come into play, where we can be that guidance and we can be that support for anyone, be it a man, woman, a child that needs to get out of a bad situation or needs to talk about something that could potentially turn into a bad situation. We talked about agencies and groups that are out there doing whatever that they can to provide services to protect these individuals. Larissa Herenda is one of those individuals. She's the executive director of Yellow Brick House, operating now in its 39th year. She joined Yellow Brick House in 2004 and has doubled the agency's scope and delivery of shelter services, community counseling, and supportive services. She's also the co-chair of the York Region Violence Against Women Coordinating Committee and the treasurer of the Board of Ontario Association Interval and Transitional Housing. She's the 2013 recipient of the Attorney General Victim Services Award of Distinction. In 2012 and in 2008, she won the Province of Ontario Award, Leading Women Building Communities, for her exceptional community leadership to improve the lives of women and girls in Ontario. And today, she is going to outline what is out there and what is available, and I guess the hopes that maybe one day we won't be celebrating a 40th year or in a different capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, Larissa Herenda.
Thank you, Angie. Before I start, I would like to introduce Kelly Harrison, Senior Program Supervisor for Ministry of Community Social Services, our primary funder for the Violence Against Women sector. Kelly?
Hello, good morning. I'm here on behalf of our ministry, the Ministry of Community and Social Services, and our minister, Dr. Helena Jasic, who would really wish she could be here today in person, but she couldn't unfortunately be here. The minister and our ministry would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone attending the Invisible No More End Violence Against Women, in honor of the 14 women who lost their lives and those who were injured based on gender-based violence. The tragedy that happened on December 6, 1989 at l'École Polytechnique de Montreal. We recognize that this still continues to be an issue, and we also wanted to recognize the impact on Indigenous women, the murdered and missing women. We were pleased to learn that as an example of its commitment to end violence against women, the City of Markham will be proclaiming December 6th as a National Day of Remembrance. Minister Jasic has had the opportunity to visit many violence against women agencies across the province, including Yellow Brick House, to see firsthand the vital work being done every single day in support of women and children who've experienced violence. I'd like to thank all the staff and volunteers for the critical work they do each and every day. On behalf of the Minister and the Ministry, we'd like to thank Markham Mayor Frank Scarpitti and Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong and everyone for hosting this event today. And thank you as well to the organizations and volunteers who have worked to make this day a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. We appreciate the message from you. And Minister Jazik was a tremendous supporter of the violence against women sector. Welcome, everybody. And I know we've been hearing some tremendous statistics today, domestic violence affecting 1 in 4 women in our community and their children. We have 1 in 2 women that report experiencing at least 1 incident of physical or sexual violence since the age of 16 in Canada. A woman is killed every 6 days in Canada as a result of domestic violence. 40% of domestic violence starts during woman's first pregnancy. Every year in Canada, 362,000 children experience family violence. And as of today, Ontario Association for Interrural and Transitional Housing released their newest femicide list. That's listing all the murders that took place between November 26, 2016, last year, to November 25, 2017. And 32 women were killed in Ontario, averaging 1 woman every 11 days. You may think that violence happens only to a select cultural, socioeconomic group of women, but that is not true. It can happen to any woman. It can happen to any child. It can happen to any one of us, and we can find ourselves in a home that is riddled with abuse, violence, and terror. For most of us, luckily, this is unthinkable, but for many, this is their reality. Domestic violence is also a violation of human rights, and it's happening in our community and in Canada at an alarming rate. At times, I hear people say, why doesn't she just leave? And that is really not the question that we should be asking ourselves. The question should be, why doesn't he stop? We must remember not to blame the victims of violence. We must offer our support. We must believe them. We must listen to them. And we must speak up against domestic violence and hold perpetrators responsible. At Yellow Brick House, our work is geared to assist families who are seeking violence-free lives. Women and children come to our shelters when their lives are in danger. And we must be able to offer them safe shelter beds when they take this first step in rebuilding their lives. It is a hard step to take. I want you to just imagine leaving behind everything that you worked for, all that you have, all that surrounds you. But women do it because no material possession is more important than the lives of her children and the life of her as a woman and as a mother. Often they have to forgo their community support as well. And when these women come to us with their children, we must be able to assist them. We must be able to offer them counseling, family court support, group support, transitional housing support, anything that they need to restart their life. And it takes the whole community to do this and to make this happen. It takes the support of each one of you here today to help us do that. And these women and children deserve every ounce of support that we can give to them. We also believe that in addition to the intervention services that we provide, we believe in prevention through our public education programs. We believe this is critical in order to change the tide. We invest in educating youth about healthy relationships in order to stop the vicious cycle down the road. Today, we remember, today we celebrate the support of our community that is so adamant in making sure that the services, that life-saving services are available to the abused women and children. I am grateful for the leadership that the City of Markham has demonstrated towards every woman and child affected by violence. It takes the leadership of Mayor Frank Scarpitti and Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong. Our Regional Chairperson, Wayne Emerson, thank you for being here today. They have consistently demonstrated intolerance for the issue of domestic violence and are, even today, asking for the support of the community to help us. Suzanne Smoke, I want to thank you for bringing the voices of over 4,000 murdered and missing of Indigenous women and girls. You have my personal commitment for increased collaboration. The 41 beds and 10 cribs that are offered by our 2 shelters And the community counseling and supportive services touch over 5,500 lives every single year. Every woman and every child that finds themselves in need of our services thanks you for your support. You are indeed helping us save lives. Each one of us demonstrates that it takes a village to offer support to women who could be our mothers, our sisters, our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues, and children who are sitting in classrooms with our own children. It takes a village to engage men, to hold abusers accountable, and show their amazing support to their female counterparts. These women and children are individuals that we come in touch with every single day, whether we know it or not. Domestic violence does not exclude anyone. We all feel the impact of terrorized families. Women should not be killed and tortured because we are women. Almost 30 years ago, our country suffered a huge loss. And today, we're still dealing with deadly losses. As a mother, I want my son, as all mothers do, to be respectful, kind, and equal to all women. Fathers want their daughters to have equal rights as their sons and equal opportunities. And they don't want their daughters to undergo abuse at the hands of their future partners. I would now like to take this opportunity to introduce you to a survivor of domestic violence, a woman who has bravely stepped forward to share the impact of our services on her life. Please join me in welcoming Kathy.
Thank you, Loris, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I am a survivor. I was impacted by violence for many, many years, and it was Yellow Brick House that helped me rebuild. I'm going to read you my story, so there's a lot of details in it, and it was just easier to be able to read this to you. So I woke up one day, and I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I was made to believe that I caused my own anxiety, and I lived this way for 9 years. At first, I called my EAP provider for counseling. Little did I know she picked up on signs of emotional abuse and strongly suggested I called Yellow Brick House. I had never heard of them before, and at this point, I still had no idea what was happening to me. I made the call one day to Yellow Brick House, and I'll never forget it. I was put on hold for only a moment or two, and was about to hang up, thinking this was not what I need, when a really sweet voice came on the other line. The lady I spoke to was so supportive and kind. She suggested I come to a group session, and that's where it all changed for me. This wasn't easy, though. Many times I would be standing at the door of Yellow Brick House thinking, this isn't the place for me. This is a place for women that are beaten up and bruised. I was still convinced I was the problem. But week after week, I continued to go. Something made me go week after week. I attended one-on-one counseling sessions as well as group sessions. I found myself calling the hotline more and more in tears and desperation. This went on for months. I was beaten down emotionally, and I was in such a dark place. I felt like I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. I have 2 boys, and at the time they were 4 and 6 years old. They had seen their mother so beaten down emotionally. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't. It was hard. It was really, really hard. One day I built up the courage to do it, and I could not have done it without Yellow Brick House. The amount of patience all the counselors gave me was incredible. They taught me to journal, which I used to bring to group every week. I didn't know what was my reality anymore. They taught me what a healthy relationship is and what isn't. They taught me how to be strong for my kids, and they taught me how to respect myself and be kind to myself. To some, this might seem like an easy fix, but when you have been slowly isolated and subtly controlled by someone over years, it's a very difficult situation to change, or even to know something is wrong, especially when most of the time it felt normal. I owe my life to Yellow Brick House. I have come full circle and would not have been able to gain the strength I did without them. I'm very successful in my career and in my personal relationships. My boys get to see me happy and strong, and it's important for me. It's important to me that my boys grow up treating women with the respect that they deserve. So there was a quote that really stuck with me for many years, and Yellow Brick House really shared a lot with me. I could go on and probably have pages of stories that I can share, but there's a certain one that stuck out to me, and it was by Martin Luther King, and it's, in the end, we will remember that it's not the words of our enemies, but it's the silence of our friends. And I think that stuck to me because my friends knew, and after I had laughed, I said, did you know? Yes, we saw it. We saw the abuse, but they didn't know how to say it. They didn't know how to speak out. People don't know how to speak out, and they're afraid to. And I think awareness is so important. It's important for our children to see the signs of abuse and not just the physical abuse. I had no idea what emotional abuse was until Yellow Brick House told me to read the book, The Emotional Abused Woman, and I just couldn't believe word for word in the book. I just have to say that together, please, we need to help remove the stigma of violence and abuse. And thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Kathy, for your courage to share a part of your life with us, a part that threatened to destroy you, a part that eventually made you stronger. So today we celebrate you. May you continue to inspire other women in our community with your strength. Thank you. I have another amazing pleasure to introduce a very special young man that has agreed to share his story of surviving violence as a child. James, it is my honor to have you a part of my life and to welcome you here today.
Thank you, Loris. Just under 9 million, or about 1 in 3 Canadians, say that they had experienced violence in their home before the age of 15. My name is James Malonis, and I'm a part of that statistic. What I'm about to share may sound like a story, but it's something that I lived for close to 19 years. From as early as I can remember, I witnessed my mother's abuser, my father, physically and verbally attack and assault my mom. And when I would come to her defense, that abuse would come to me. At first I thought being slapped was normal, you know, kind of like the light spanking you would see in 90s movies. The slapping turned into getting punched, turned into getting kicked, which turned into being thrown down the stairs and dragged down the sidewalk with your life threatened. I had my bones cracked, I've had bruised ribs, and I've gone to school with black eyes. Luckily for me, I was an all-around athlete and could blame my injuries on sports. It wasn't until my sophomore year in high school where my best friend questioned my black eye. Due to the fact that I was off on another injury, she knew I wasn't playing sports. She flat out asked me, "Are you being abused?" She's the one person in this world I can't lie to. And I remember sitting just on the concrete step outside of our school as I bared my soul to her. And the best thing she did was pull out her makeup compact and cover up my eye so Children's Aid would not be called, so my brother and I would not be separated. I've stood up to my father numerous times, and just let me paint a picture for you, because I'm a pretty big guy. My dad was bigger than I was. He was stronger, and he had no conscience. I would get in his face, I would throw myself on top of him, all in the name of defending my mom. All in the name of defending the woman who gave me life. I was fortunate that during the week, my mom would work nights, and by the time she got home, my father was already sleeping. When I was old enough, I got myself a job just to stay out of the house. Between work, my social obligations with school, playing numerous competitive sports, I was gone a lot. Unfortunately, there were weekends, holidays, and every waking moment when my father was awake. My brother, on the other hand, was never exposed to the violence. Nick was my father's golden child. My father wouldn't lay a finger on my mom or I if we were in the room, if Nick was in the room. The abuse had become so bad I started to fear for my life. I'd been threatened numerous times, and as time had gone on, the violence had escalated. I did the one thing I knew that I had to do, and that was to protect my family. That's a big task for someone who's 18 and a senior in high school. I left school early that day. I planned to leave school early that day. I was going to drive home, pack up my car with our 2 dogs, and I had 3 bags packed. I can just see them now. There were 3 black Adidas duffel bags under my bed. One for my mom, one for me, and one for my brother. I had packed clothing, I had packed simple toiletries, I had packed some cash, and I packed protection. My plan was to pick up my brother from school and drop him off at my aunt's house in the city, come back to pick up my mom with a note written to my father we were leaving. And we were just going to leave everything behind and start fresh. But we knew that if we did that, I would not be standing here today. My father was a powerful man. Physically, yes, but his connections were what scared me. More often than not, abuse victims are forced to walk away from their families. This is something I'm all too familiar with. From the moment my mom had my father arrested and then she divorced him, I was cut out from that entire half of the family. My last name may be Malonis, but I have no ties to it. I was cut from the family will, I was excluded from family events, I was uninvited for my cousin's wedding, and I missed the birth of her daughter. I was banned from visiting my paternal great-grandmother at her old age home, and I was forced to sit alone at church. My father's family drove a wedge between my brother and I, and we went close to 5 years of no contact. He had blocked me on social media, he had sent my calls right to voicemail, and he would walk the other way when I saw him in the mall. The last time I saw my brother was 20 months ago at his funeral. This is all because I took a stand against my father, my abuser. I had just turned 19 when my mom had finally had enough. She had been with my dad for 20 years. Why? Because we're Greek and you don't get divorced. You become submissive to your husband and you stand and you take whatever he gives you. 20 years. That's 7,300 days. That's 7,300 counts of abuse. That's 7,300 counts of abuse too many. My mom stayed because she wanted Nick and I to be raised with 2 parents. She didn't want to be a single mom. She wanted us to wait until we were old enough to have consent to leave on our own terms. I still say to this day I was raised by a single mother. My father brought home the big checks. We lived in a fancy house. We drove great cars. I lived what I thought was a normal life. I have no father, because someone who acts like that is not a parent. What would have been a simple divorce and restraining order escalated when our lawyer found out about the guns my father had in the house. Both my mom and I had been threatened with a loaded gun. I remember it was late fall, early winter, and I was packing up for a ski trip. My father was packing for a hunting trip. And he looked at me with this stupid grin he always had on his face. And I watched him as he loaded a single bullet into one of his rifles. And he held the barrel of that gun to my forehead and said, "Listen, Nancy, if you ever turn your back on me, this bullet has your name on it." We were ushered by an unmarked police car from our lawyer's office that was down in the city to the Richmond Hill police station just down at Yonge and Major Mac. Instantly, my mom and I were separated, questioned by 2 different detectives and 2 different officers from the RCMP. We were detained like criminals. They thought we'd fabricated the whole story because our stories were so identical. I'm sorry if you thought my story was identical because I remembered dates and times. When your abuser is hitting you, you don't focus on the punch that's coming or the kick that's swinging. You focus on the clock saying 4:15, the pasta boiling on the stove, or that dirty t-shirt you're wearing from football practice. That's where your mind goes to keep away from the pain. Testifying against my father was one of the most freeing things I have ever done. It was rewarding, but it was also so damn scary. I had never been in trouble with the law before, so I had never seen the inside of a courtroom other than what I saw in Law & Order. Staring down at my father while his lawyer grilled me and tried to catch me in a lie and put words in my mouth was so terrifying. But then my inner warrior kicked in, and I nailed that son of a bitch. Sorry. It's almost like my guardian angel had snapped her fingers and the chains that were holding me down were let go. I was finally free. I was no longer victim to my father. Domestic violence has impacted my life in many ways. Some positive, many negative. I have subconsciously suppressed so many memories while holding on to others. I still have these giant walls up where I don't let many people in. Most of my friends are female, all my role models are female, and I just don't mix well with men. I have horrible trust issues, and I still suffer from horrible anxiety. For years, I had terrible self-esteem due to the constant put-downs. My height, my weight, my sexuality. I was called a giant for being 6'5" at age 10. I was called fat because I was built like a linebacker, and a linebacker I played for the under-18 Canada football team. I was called Nancy because I came out at an early age. I was the first openly gay athlete and student in Richmond Hill at the time. Everything my father did to put me down, every insult, every slap, every kick, I am thankful. It taught me one thing, and it taught me how to love. It taught me how to love me first and foremost, the man that God has made, every flaw, every defect, every crazy outburst that comes out of my mouth. And I'm only smiling at Vivian because she knows. She knows what I'm like. I stand before you proudly, 6'5", pushing 300 pounds. I'm open about my sexuality, and don't let the negativity of this cruel world eat me up. I met the love of my life, who has shown me that there is more to life than violence. He was the first outsider into my world that truly understood me. He helped me break down the walls brick by brick. He made me realize it's okay to not always be macho. It's okay to not always carry a bravado. It's okay to not sleep with a baseball bat. I found healing in sharing. I started by volunteering at women's shelters and crisis hotlines, and that's when I started sharing my story. I raise money every year for shelters. I am a commission donor. I'm a realtor, so a part of every one of my commissions goes to the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation, which supports women's shelters across the country. Every spring, I participate in the White Ribbon Walk a Mile event, which is a men's march to take a stand for women who have been victimized by gender-based violence. This year, I did something interesting. I was asked to participate in Toronto's Dancing with the Stars. I'm a big guy. I have 2 left feet. I don't know how to dance. I'm 6'5". My dance partner was 5 feet. But I know I have a platform, and my platform reaches thousands of people every day. So I said to myself, I'm going to do whatever I can to win and to raise money for the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. And I'm going to make sure, till the day that I die, that not another woman faces domestic violence. I danced my not-so-little butt off for every woman out there, for every woman who was still with her abuser. I know I could make a difference, and that gave me the determination to win. And win I did. The money I fundraised and the proceeds that I won were donated to the Shelter Foundation, which received national coverage. Most victims will not speak up, but with the help of Yellow Brick House, with the help of other women who have shared their stories so graciously, with the help of Suzanne Smoke, who has brought light to the Indigenous problems that are currently being faced in the world, not just in Canada. Women now have a safe place to seek refuge, to seek shelter, and to start a new life. With social media comes a new age of awareness. She wasn't the first, and we know she will not be the last. But Rihanna took a stand against Chris Brown in that infamous car scene. Pamela Anderson and her children had fallen victim to Tommy Lee. Former President Bill Clinton openly speaks about the abuse he endured with his father. And most recently, Lindsay Lohan streamed a live Instagram video of her then fiance grabbing and abusing her. It happens more often than we think. Around the world, the 1%ers, the not 1%ers, everyone in between. Every woman at some point in her life will face some form of gender-based violence. But together, we can end that cycle. As you leave here this morning, I want you to remember one thing. You are bound to run into someone who is silently struggling. I don't know what it'll be, but your heart will tell you when the time is right. I want you to be the reason someone smiles today. I want you to be the reason that someone is no longer invisible. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for sharing your story with such courage, for breaking free of the chains, and for being that warrior. You'll always be a warrior to me. Thank you, James.
Thank you all very much. James, Kathy, thank you for sharing your stories with us, and I almost wish we didn't have to hear them, and I almost wish that neither one of you were victims, but you are survivors, and I really, really hope that everyone takes with you today what we can do next to help other people and what we can continue to help you. But thank you both very, very much for sharing your stories today. You are incredible, incredible individuals. Our next speaker, Rehana Dubé, is a senior human resources leader with over 20 years of experience in corporate human resources roles. Her leadership of human resources departments at Baxter Corporation, Shoppers Drug Mart, and American Express has contributed to her breadth of experience. She is driven by her passion to help organizations and individuals achieve their goals outside of work. She enjoys community involvement. She serves on the board of Yellow Brick House and was the former chair on the board of directors at 360 Kids. She's been an active community volunteer through the variety of nonprofit organizations and events. And she holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Western Glamorgan and the graduate certificate in executive coaching from Royal Roads University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rehana Dubé.
Thank you, Angie. And all I can say is I'm so pleased to be here, but so humbled by the greatness that I'm surrounded by and the support that we have. I have the easy job of acknowledging and thanking, which I love. And first, I'd like to thank Chair Wayne Emerson for his unwavering support of our cause. I think he's still somewhere. And I again want to acknowledge our speakers, Kathy and James, for their courage and conviction. I know there are so many out there being inspired, and your stories really help us to know what we should be doing out there in the community. Now, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors for our Markham shelter beds. And I would ask that if you are in the room or you have a representative, please join Loris at the front there for a small token of our appreciation. So we'll start with Howland Green Homes Limited for sponsoring 3 beds. We'd like to recognise TAC for 1 bed. Encompass Financial for 1 bed. Flato for 1 bed. Angus Glen Foundation, Kylemore Communities for 1 bed. Frank Scarpitti Charitable Foundation. Minto Group and Metropia for 1 bed. Kingsburg Homes Limited and Markland Manor Corporation, 1 bed. Fieldgate, $5,000 per year for 4 years. Digram, $5,000 per year for 4 years. And Times Group for a one-time donation of $7,500.
Thank you. Just before we move further, I just want to take this moment. I don't know whether or not you understood what we just did. Yellow Brick House in the city of Markham, they have 19 beds. And in order for it to sustain itself for the next 4 years, we have Chair Emerson, Mayor Frank Scarpitti, myself. We went on a journey to try to see how we can get individuals to step up from the community to support Yellow Brick House. What you've just heard, and I just kept track because I wasn't certain, but we succeeded. Out of the 19 beds, we got commitment for 10 beds. And that is incredible because of the leadership of Chair Emerson and Mayor Frank Scarpitti. So I just wanted to say thank you to those individuals. As you could see, most of them, they don't come out to be recognized, but it is sad because we want those individuals to be seen because they have made a commitment to address violence against women. And they need to be seen as well. So I'm hoping that we can have another event where we could just celebrate these individuals. But just to let you know, and Yellow Brick House, it's been a pleasure, and we'll continue to work towards that 19 beds. We're over halfway, which is incredible to the leadership that we have here. So I know Chair Emerson will have to leave shortly. I just wanted to take an opportunity because without your guidance, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I just want to say thank you very much for all the hard work. And when I came to you, you did not even hesitate, nor did Mayor Frank Scarpitti hesitate. 2 outstanding gentlemen that are here for the right reason. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now, Violence Against Women Awareness Event Committee Chair Nazrish Hussain, Vice Chair Josie Rose, social worker and psychotherapist, have been working with York Region and individuals who have experienced trauma, mental health, and homelessness. She works with the same women who we are discussing here today, and she's also the co-chair and committee for the awareness of VAW. Ladies and gentlemen, Nazrish Hussain.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for attending. We set out to have an event today for remembrance as well as action, and I think we've done just that. We've started to break the silence that happens in our communities, and we've made a message go out that violence against women is, in whichever form, is unacceptable, and that we care. There are people in this community that care to end it. And as we can see, there is a diverse group of us here, young, old, from all different backgrounds, whether that's ethnic backgrounds or professions. And it really shows a positive response from the community for the goal that we set out to do. I wanted to first of all thank the Mayor, Frank Scarpitti, as well as Regional Councillor Nirmala Armstrong for taking leadership and bringing this committee together and to make this possible. I also want to thank the committee that made today's event successful. And the committee is for the awareness of violence against women, and the members are listed up above. And I want to thank every one of them for helping and making a difference. I also want to thank the committee for giving me the opportunity to chair. I remember back in around grade 5, grade 6, I had to spend a few years in South Asia, in a country in South Asia, and I was inspired by an aunt over there that I have who's a women's rights activist, and I followed her at events around the country just like this one, and she was also the chair of status for women there. And at that time, I was just shocked because I thought it was just something that happened over there in South Asia, coming from Canada. It was very shocking. And it wasn't until, well, not recently, but, you know, much later in Canada that I've realized that it is an issue, a very serious issue here as well, and sometimes it's just more hidden. And so you have all made a difference in bringing that issue forward today. So I wanted to thank the committee, as well as some people who were not on the committee who helped out very much. And one of those people is Namisha Patel. And I met her at the press conference for this event for the first time. And since then, she just took on this great role of doing outreach in the community, whether that was for event sponsors or for people to attend or just to be aware of the issue. And she's been a great help, so our community certainly needs more people such as her. I also want to thank Prachi Bomik, who wasn't on the committee but helped us with a lot of the materials, as well as others I may have forgotten to mention, but you know who you are. I also want to thank the participants today, everyone who's come to either perform or speak about the cause. As well as the two MCs. It's very great to have you on board, and you didn't hesitate to jump in, and that was a very positive start to our planning and awareness campaign. Finally, I just want to thank all the media that came to the press conference or came today, because with your help we are able to reach everyone who is not here, and it's very great that you're taking an interest in this issue and spreading the message. I'm going to pass the mic to my vice chair for the committee, Josie Rose. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say this day is very important. It's wonderful to see the amount of people that came out today to support such a great event. And again, to Mayor Scarpitti and Regional Councillor Armstrong for doing this day today. It's very important. And as a social worker and a councillor and a person that provides trauma-informed care, I currently work with a lot of individuals, men, women, and children, who are vulnerably housed due to mental health. And most of the individuals I support suffer from schizophrenia, personality disorder, from depression, anxiety, just to name a few. And the things that they all have in common is suffering from childhood abuse, from violence against them as a person. And these occurrences cause massive consequences, as we heard from our survivors today. And the research shows that many people suffering from schizophrenia or from personality disorder, there's a direct link with violence and the experience. Even the hallucinations that they experience may not even look what happened, but it is a manifestation of what they've gone through their lives. So, and many of the other women that I support, or individuals that I support, were sent to me, or people that were forced out of their homes due to violence that we've heard today. They've lost everything, not just their homes, their employment, their cars, their financial security, but most important, they lose their dignity and their self-worth. And one thing I hate to hear from the public is when people say that people living on welfare are going into these shelters are just lazy, or they're not taking care of their children. But we have to remember that there are people suffering from trauma. And trauma is huge, and it can cause immobility, and they lose a lot of hope. And it's hard to move forward, and or they just don't know where the resources are within York Region. And as Angie Seth said, it's hard to move forward when there's no hope. So the one thing in recovery is finding a safe place to go, and a place where you can have a roof over your head, to achieve safety and stability. And I think that's one of the most important things for people to move forward, is to have that safety and stability. And this is why we're here today, to remember those who have lost, who were lost to violence, and those who we can help today. And Yellow Brick House, as we've heard, will be able to provide that stabilization and safety and help to help them move on and to restore their self-worth. And that's why we're here today. So, I mean, if you look at the statistics, it costs York Region hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to support a person who is experiencing mental health. And the reason that they're having to get some more help is there's not adequate care or adequate places for them to be able to go and survive. So, and where they have to utilize addiction services, substances, just to be able to self-soothe or survive each day. And just to cope. And then a lot of families, as we've heard, are dismantled because CAS comes in because they are not able to find a place to house their kids. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of my clients that I deal with on a daily basis is trying to keep these families together due to the experiences that they faced as when they were growing up. And it's just, we need to try and keep these families together, and we have to do that through the help of Yellow Brick House. So to me today, I'm calling call to action for everybody to be able to speak to your MPPs and your MPs and your mayors to provide funding for trauma support, which is really important because there's not. The wait list in York Region right now is over a year long. So for people to actually get that trauma help, it's very important. And we see my daily basis when I'm counseling people, you see the great strides that they can take. And I've seen women that we see for the survivors today go from all the way down, being able to survive and now working, keeping their kids, and just living their day to day. So I think it's really important that we provide that wraparound support services. And remember that if you have somebody that is suffering from violence, and let them know about Yellow Brick House. There's also 310-COPE that they can call when they're dealing with that immediate, that they need that immediate help. and called Streamline Services, so they can access people like me and like Yellow Brick House, where we can provide that wraparound support and be able to help them move forward within their lives. So, and also remember, thank you, Susan, that was a fantastic speech that you gave earlier today, but we have to remember the Aboriginal community and the abused women and children, and even the men and women, the men and boys that are out there that are dealing with a lot and the injustices that they face. So that's my little spiel for today. But I also wanted to thank the event sponsors for today. The Wu family, who's a Plant Learn sponsor, and Distributel Communicated Limited. The silver sponsors, Love Gelato, which we're going to have in the outside foyer so we can get some food. And we also want to recognize the bronze sponsors, Rukshan Par Consulting Services, the Law Office of Prasad Hassan and LLP, and Starbucks Markham District, who again is giving us coffee and tea in the hallway, and Remax Prime Properties Box Grove, and Box Grove Connected Presidents Association, and they raised $200 for us for today. So thank you.
If I may, as I've indicated earlier with the two outstanding gentlemen we've had in support, these are two outstanding, wonderful, caring women. When I had this vision about putting together an event like this, I invited Nazish Hussain as well as Josie to be part of it and to help orchestrate and execute, and this is what we have today. Nazish was a little bit shy in saying a little bit about her, so I'm going to say a little bit more. She is a family lawyer. Both her and her husband are family lawyers, and they deal with Legal Aid Ontario, serving clients who have, who's going through domestic violence. And not only does she work hard for her client, but she's also a mother of 3 children, ages 2, 4, and 7. So in addition to having the profession and doing what she does, she also stepped up to the plate that late last night after we had our council meeting here, I've been getting phone calls, messages, and we worked very late, and she does this, as well as Josie. Like, they are 2 incredible women, so I wanted to say thank you to these 2 women, their leadership, along with the members of the committee, because you worked very hard, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for executing this.
Thank you, Nirmala. And on that note, that was supposed to be my line. I do thank you both for your incredibly hard work. I know that the emails were going crazy till almost midnight last night in preparation for today. And we do have the staff and board members of Yellow Brick House have a small token of appreciation for both of you that I'll present with you now.
Thank you all very, very, very much. Again, thank you very much, Nazrish and Josie, for all of the work that you're doing. The one thing that I'm noticing in this room, as we share these stories and we talk about the importance of trust and we talk about the turmoil that we've gone through, but what we have survived and what we've moved forward and the successes in our life, I'm getting this amazing sense of power in this room that so far, that although we're talking about a day where we're saying we need to stop the violence, I'm feeling empowered that when we leave this room, we will be doing everything we can to stop the violence. So thank you all for being here. I'd like to bring up Michelle White back up to the front here. She's going to be performing another song, I Didn't Know My Own Strength.
Thank you so much, Angie. Such a wonderful honor to be here and to close off the event this morning. Thank you to each and every one who came. And I love this space that we've held it in. The circle. It's such a level playing field, the circle, right? Symbol of strength, a symbol of unbrokenness, a symbol of unity. And together, that's what we're aiming to do here, to end the cycle of violence against women. As a survivor myself, my story mirrors Jane's so much, growing up in a very abusive home. And this song talks about the journey that we go on from hopelessness to triumph through inner resilience. And a lot of times we don't know it. We feel so helpless, but we are stronger than we think. So thank you to the survivors who demonstrate that you are stronger than you think. Thank you to the guardians of our society who demonstrate that you are stronger than you think. To all the caregivers and friends of victims, you are stronger than you think. It's so hard to walk alongside. It takes so much patience. It takes a long time. This journey of healing takes a long time, but we are stronger than we think. We've listened a lot, but can we do something? Can you do something for me today? Can you just say this with me? We are stronger than we think. Yes. Amen. Let me play that track. Thank you. You're stronger than we think. Whitney. Lost touch with my soul. I had nowhere to turn. I had nowhere to go. Lost sight of my dreams. Thought it would be the end of me. I thought I'd never make it through. I had no hope to hold on to. I thought I would break, but I didn't know my own strength. And I crashed down and I tumbled, but I did not crumble. I got through all the pain. I didn't know my own strength. So by my darkest hour, my faith kept me alive. I picked myself back up and held my head up high. I was not built to break. I didn't know my own strength. Found hope in my heart. I found the light to light my way out of the dark. Found all that I need right here inside of me. to break. Didn't know my own strength. Ooh, I was not built to break. No, no. Now I got to know my own strength.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Michelle. Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle White. Thank you. This has been quite an incredible morning, a powerful morning. It doesn't end here, of course. There's going to be a flag raising that is going to take place outside. There's going to be lunch in the Great Hall and, of course, a cake cutting to conclude the event. I want to again thank all of you for coming today, for supporting the cause, for supporting a Yellow Brick House, for helping to raise awareness about violence against women in our community, and sending the message that we stop it, and we stop it now. We stop it today. Have yourself an incredible holiday, and I wish you all strength. Thank you.
So just to let you know, we're going to go outside, and we're not outside, but outside this council chambers, and we're going to cut the cake first. And then after that, we'll proceed outside to the flag raising and then come back in for lunch.